And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. I'm your host, Jeff Marlowe, and today I'm rejoined by my co-host back from vacation in Hawaii, Kathy Amos. This afternoon, we're going to be discussing today's 91-68 win. My bad. My bad. Discussing today's 91-68 win by your number 6 ranked Hoosiers over Rutgers. Wow, not sure where that's coming from. But anyway, you're having
a sluggish start too. It's okay.
Yeah, by your number 6 ranked Hoosiers, kind of like they did. Wow. I'm not sure what's going on here.
That's right.
So anyway, this win takes the women's.
You want me to jump in?
Yeah. Hang on a second.
All right. Technical difficulties.
I've got some feedback from somewhere.
Uh-oh. I'm getting nothing.
I got it.
You got it? All right.
I got it. Hang on a second. I think I got it now. I don't know why it was doing that. All right. So let's redo this. Let's start over, Kathy. Go back to the music, and then Ari can edit it.
Let's do that.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another edition of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. I'm your host, Jeff Marlowe, and today I'm rejoined by my co-host back from vacation, Kathy Amos. And this afternoon, we're going to discuss today's 91-68 victory by your number 6 ranked Hoosiers over Rutgers. This takes the women's record to 20-1 overall, 10-1 in the conference. But let's start this show the way we start every show, and that's with our banner moment. And Kathy, I'm going to go with today on banner moment. First of all, 8 wins in a row now, back on top of the league by half a game. But for me, to see Grace Berger, in my opinion, have her best game since coming back from an injury. I thought she looked as smooth in movement. Obviously, she was hitting shots, but I thought it felt like she was in the flow, the best maybe we've seen her since she came back, and hopefully those will be a sign of things to come. So today's banner moment, kudos to Grace Berger for playing her best game coming back from her injury. Our banner moment is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Their new Indiana designs have been a big hit. So whether you want only IU gear or other college teams or nothing associated with a team, Home Field probably has something for you. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. And once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And as we said, back from vacation, back here on the Doing the Work podcast, it's Kathy Amos. Let's go over to Kathy for the Amos angle.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jeff. And I definitely missed some really exciting games, but special thanks to Andy Bottoms and to Jay Horry out there for filling in on those 2 games while I was out. I did listen to both of those later. I didn't watch the game or listen live. I was busy doing vacation type things. So I really enjoyed that, but those games were fantastic. And kind of leading into this game, and I'm sure we'll get into it more, not surprising after those, big week, really, not just the last two games with Michigan and Ohio State, but we also had Illinois on the road out there that we were playing. I'm not surprised that that first quarter I felt was probably some of the not the best basketball we've seen from this team this year. So not really surprising, right? I'm sure, the motions weren't there. You didn't have the crowd was again amazing, but it wasn't quite the same crowd as what we saw with Ohio State. So you had that. And I'm sure, at some point there's got to be some emotional and physical, tiredness that's catching up with them. And I felt that was there in the first quarter. But, this team did what they do, and they still turned everything around. And I thought by that second quarter in particular, their defense really started to ratchet back up and really clamp down in that second half. I think we only allowed in the fourth quarter, I think, Rutgers only scored 7 points in that fourth quarter. So each quarter I thought got better and better defensively, and they really started locking in. So that was really just good to see. So I'm really happy to be back and be able to cover this game with you again. So thanks for all of that. So to me, I'm just happy that we got yet another win, and our train just keeps rolling down that winning track.
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to use trains as an analogy on our show.
Fair. That's a good point. You have to.
But you're right.
I'm going on like 4 hours of sleep right now too. So, and my brain still thinks it's like 11 in the morning. So.
Yeah, but you're right. And let's talk a little bit about that first quarter that you mentioned. It was very sluggish. The last 3.5, 4 minutes of the first quarter was maybe about a poor an ending of a quarter that I can remember the Hoosiers playing this year. And I really felt like, again, just speculating, watching it from here, that like you said, the energy, the emotion of having that gauntlet that they'd had of playing ranked team after ranked team, big games. If they really wanted to stay in the race, they had to win. And because of that loss at Michigan State, well, now they'd gotten themselves in a position. They were tied with Iowa coming in today at the top of the standings. And it's natural, I think. You're going to look here and you see Rutgers struggling in the league. They're young, and the Smeichel girl played really well. And she was somebody that, and she was somebody we highlighted in the last episode a little bit to keep an eye on. She had been the freshman of the week last week in the Big Ten. So she just, I get it, but it was a little bit surprising for this team to be maybe as lethargic and lackadaisical as they were toward the end. So be interesting kind of really what that timeout at the second quarter was like and such. But other than what you've already talked about, what did you think of that first quarter?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure we'll get into the surprises. It was only a little surprise. Like I said to Sean as we were, traveling home today, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we come out a little slow in this game. And, and this might be a trap game. I don't expect us to lose, but that first quarter was surprising yet met my expectations, if that makes any sense whatsoever, right? It's surprising because it's not really what we've seen from them here in recent games. But at the same time, I kind of expected it, but the defense was really, they didn't seem real focused, right? I mean, they allowed 22 points for Rutgers, which was the highest of any of the four quarters. And really in particular, they were letting Rutgers be on pace to really outpace or outscore what they usually do. Rutgers usually only average 65 points per game, and we allowed them to have 22 in that first quarter alone. So definitely just something that, again, I'm sure once we had the in between quarter timeout in particular, I thought coming out into that second quarter is where I started to see a lot more changes, right? Like they seemed to settle in, they seemed focused. Rutgers, hats off to them, right? They came to play. They weren't intimidated at all by Assembly Hall or by the number 6 in front of our name. And I thought that they just played actually pretty well in that first quarter as well. And maybe we just weren't quite expecting it, but I felt they sped us up quite a bit in that first quarter.
Yeah, and kudos. And I thought they hit some tough shots. I thought, especially in the first half of that first quarter, I felt like the defense wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad like it was in the last 3 minutes where, maybe it just kind of got lethargic. But they hit some tough shots in the first part of that quarter, which again gets you confidence. You're going to start playing better when you see the ball go in. But flip side of that is, like you mentioned, we only scored 17. So with that, we scored 74 over the last 3 quarters to finish up with the 91. So again, as we've seen here, a couple of the workaholics have mentioned that once we got it going, and as Kathy mentioned, once we got it going, the offense really started, and we'll talk more about that when we get inside the numbers, I'm sure, to game ball and stuff. But I thought the offense really started to click about midway through the second quarter. And when we went, it might have been maybe a little before that, because I remember we were texting, and I was even like, take a timeout. There's kind of right there at the beginning of the second quarter, first couple of possessions, I thought we looked a little lethargic still. And then we went off on that run. It ended up being what I factored 18-4. Went off on an 18-4 run and went from 7 down to 8 up. And so, from there on, this offense and the defense really was what we expected.
Right. Yeah. I have a lot of, we don't do meaningful moments on our show, but I do write down stuff. And a lot of mine came in that second quarter, right? We had, the only thing which kind of worried me is immediately out of the first quarter timeout into the second quarter, where we came out with a turnover. We turned it over right away. And that made it our 4th turnover in the game. And I started to get a little concerned. I'm like, I thought I'd see some adjustments, but after that, 20 seconds in, we had Grace get a steal and then score on a fast break. We had Garzon hit her 3rd 3 in a row to go 3 for 3, and she'd up 4 for 4 in that half from 3. And, we had at one point we were playing 3 of our freshmen together, which hopefully we'll talk a little bit about our depth, because we saw 9 players again today in a game that was at least, for a little while fairly tight. We had a steal from Lexus. We had a Chloe McNeil steal. Grace with doing Grace things with all of her assists and hockey assists and stuff. I thought that second quarter was the best of the 4, for sure, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So as you said, let's kind of move on into as the expected part of our show. And I will let you kind of go first. What that you thought went as expected?
Yeah, and I'll continue on with that. That second quarter is, for me, what is really expected out of this team. And I think Coach Morin talks about it a lot, which is their maturity, right? They didn't come out maybe with their hair on fire and locked in as focused as we might want them to be from tip-off. It's going to happen, but they have the poise, the maturity, and the basketball IQ, and being well coached as well, to come out and to kind of refocus themselves and make that second quarter turn around and really just keep extending it throughout the whole game. So to me, that's what really is as expected. Again, is just, I'll echo what Coach Morin says, and it's the maturity of this team.
Yeah, and that's obviously a huge factor. And she talked about that after the Ohio State game the other night, especially. I'm going to kind of steal on a number here, but 21 assists on 32 baskets. And that's what we've come to expect from this team. That's why I'm throwing it in here. And to me, it's almost it's a surprise when we aren't moving the ball very well right now, because this team shares the ball, as you mentioned. Grace Berger led the way, and just kind of the unselfishness for the people, for the players to make the extra pass. Well, which leads to kind of what you were talking about, the hockey assist, we would call it in basketball, that doesn't actually get recorded as an assist, but good coaches and good fans recognize it and such, and know it's an important part of the play. And so with that, and so when you look at 32 of 51 overall from the field, 21 assists. So again, not only are we sharing the ball, but we're getting the ball to players in good positions to score. And that's one of the things, like if you watch some of the other games, there are teams who share the ball, but oftentimes the pass is just a little off. It takes them away from where they want it to be. This team, and I may have to do a lot with that maturity, or the fact that a lot of them have been around together for a while. Grace, Chloe, Mackenzie, Parrish is relatively new to the program, but she's played a lot of basketball. She has high basketball IQ. But you especially look at those first 3 I mentioned, who have played together for so long, that I just think there's an innate sense where they know how to get the ball to them where they want it.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe that's something we're starting to come to expect too, is their shooting, right? And they're still second in the nation, right, in field goal percentage, and they were right there again today. Yeah, me too. 63% field goal percentage. That just is, maybe we shouldn't, but it seems like we're starting to come to expect that from this team. That's just a really fantastic number, I think. The other thing I think went as expected again after the first quarter. So we had 3 turnovers in that first quarter and ended up with only 10 on the whole game. And so again, just kind of protecting the ball is usually something this team does fairly well. Every once in a while, we've seen a couple of games here and there. They've gotten sped up, turned the ball over, like the Michigan State game. But I thought overall, the team really settled down and took care of the ball and we're pretty clean with it. I think we averaged around 12 and we were under that average for turnovers.
Yeah. And I was a concern that we were talking about earlier, especially in that first quarter and the first couple of possessions. We were on pace to, have several more turnovers than that. And again, I think it goes back to the maturity level. The other thing that we talked about a little bit, expectation wise, is this team has rebounded better than the team in the last year or two. But at halftime, or excuse me, at the end of that it was at halftime. We were down. We were down 15-11 on the glass. Yeah. We were down 15-11 on the glass. And again, as I tweeted, this may not be something that haunts you against Rutgers, but we had given up 6 offensive rebounds. We gave up 10 for the game. That's got to get cleaned up a little bit, but they battled back in the second half to finish even on the glass, 28-28. And there weren't as many opportunities for Indiana to have a lot of rebounds because we were hitting such a high percentage of shots, both in first and second half. But you can't give up 6 offensive rebounds in a half.
Yeah. So exactly.
That was kind of a surprise, but the expectation was that this team's going to battle and rebound, and they did that today.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any other expectations.
No, how about surprises?
Yep. So kind of actually the surprises a little bit to what you were saying was our offensive rebounding. We ended up with only 2 offensive rebounds. And again, to your point, when you're making 63% of your field goals, there's not a lot of opportunities for it. But, we had 0 second chance points today. So that kind of surprised me. I thought this would be a place we'd have an advantage over Rutgers would be in rebounding, especially on the offensive end. So to only have 2 offensive rebounds, and both of those came fairly late in the game, and then no second chance points off of any of those. I was a little surprised about the offensive rebounding for us.
Well, and then that also goes to the other big stat there, 12-0 in second chance points for Rutgers. I mean, that's really not something we see this team IU get dominated in that stat per se usually. And so with that, the surprise for me, I'm going to go back to something you mentioned earlier. And we talked a little bit about this maybe in the last couple shows as well. I know we talked a lot about with Jay on Thursday night that just look at what the freshmen especially, but the way the bench is starting to play. And the bench, scored 13 points today. Now they got outscored, but they're getting us double digits. And that was with Sarah Scalia really not providing much off the bench today. She only provided 5 points. But I thought Lexi Bargesser gave us some really solid quality minutes in the first quarter and overall. But I really especially thought, or in the first half, second quarter especially. And then Lily Meister continues just to earn her minutes and to earn more minutes. She comes in, she doesn't hurt, she's productive, she's around the rebound, she's not scoring a ton, and that's not where she's going to be yet. But if she gets an opportunity around the rim on a catch or a putback, she's taking advantage of those. And then the other one, it was nice to see Alyssa Geary get off the bench for a few minutes today, because again, I think there are going to be games like the one we had today where Matt got in a not huge foul trouble, but she picked up a few fouls, and it was nice to be able to set her. And then Lily, I think, also had a couple fouls. So it was nice to have a third option to go to, because I just think we're going to have some games down the line where we're going to see maybe something like that, where one or both of our primary post players end up in some foul trouble with that. So that was, but just a great surprise to really see the freshmen who weren't heralded and weren't expected to do a lot just because such a veteran group here play and really start to earn their minutes on the floor. And we knew outside of Garzon, we knew everything we heard was Garzon was going to be a major factor, but Bargesser and Meister especially.
Yeah, I thought I totally agree with you in terms of Lexi Bargesser. I thought she gave some really nice minutes there, really scrapping after it. She had, I think, a really good steal there at one point. I thought Lily Meister looked a little sped up today, especially on the defensive end. She ended up with, fouling quite a bit today. She had 4 fouls, and 3 of those came in the first half. But, Mackenzie was 2. I'm trying to look at my notes here. Yeah, Lily ended up with 3 and Mac had 2 in that first half. So there was just something with how they're, playing down there. I just felt like they got a little sped up, and I didn't see a whole lot after that first half from Lily until towards the end. So I didn't think this was the best game for Lily today, but to your point, she's still been getting in and contributing a lot, way more than I thought she would at the beginning of the year. So she has definitely been a nice surprise overall in the season. Another surprise I had was kudos to Rutgers. I thought, especially in the first half, they really, and it kind of sounds probably weird, I thought they really played good defense on Mackenzie Holmes. Mackenzie Holmes only, quote unquote, only had 10 points in that first half. And, it seemed like they were, doubling her better than other teams. Some of the other teams we played, I thought Rutgers actually surprisingly did a fairly good job on her, at least defensively in that first half.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to one more senior here, or go to our senior, our super senior, I guess we should call her. And that's Grace Berger, 3 for 3 from deep. I mean, how many times have we talked about Grace Berger? Yeah, Grace Berger is Grace Berger, and she does things. She's a winner. She's a leader. But there's many times we've talked on the show, if Grace just had a 3-point shot, how much more open her game could be. And she goes 3 for 3 today. And I think I thought her shot looked good. I thought the rotation looked good, the release. So let's see if and this is something that comes out of this, where she can maybe start knocking. If she just knocks down 1 3 a game, now you got to come out and guard her even more. And with her vision and the things she can do in the mid-range game, just really, really opens that up. But, again, for me, a pleasant surprise of Grace Berger knocking down 3 for 3.
Yep. Same for me.
You got anything else on the surprise side?
No, I think everything I wrote down we've already covered.
Yeah, and at this point, when you're 20-1, I'm not sure there are a ton of surprises at this point. It's almost like lingering questions we get to it. It's almost we're nitpicking at things, find something to do. So, Kathy, I'm going to throw it to you. What was a team number? I already mentioned the assist. So, what was a team? And we talked a little bit about rebound area. What's a team number that stood out to you?
We've talked about quite a bit of them. So, most of the ones I've written down, which are points off of turnovers, I think we talked about, right? Or maybe we haven't really touched on that. Yeah. So we had 10 points or 10 turnovers and 14 for them, but we turned ours into 15 points off of turnovers where Rutgers only had 9. So I thought, we did a good job getting our turnovers down. And also the few that we had, we didn't allow them just to really turn into points for them as well. But yeah, we've already touched on field goal percentage and rebounding. So that might've been the other big number jumping out to me. What about you though?
One more I'm going to go to here before we move on to the individuals. 25-8 in fast break points. For a team, Indiana's not a team that everybody kind of thinks as fast pace, break out and get. But today, 25-8 on fast break points. And now that number really jumped out. I didn't realize until I printed off the stat sheet that it was that high. But that makes winning a little bit easier. When you can get transition point or fast break points, when you can get those fast break points, and get some easy buckets, it makes your offense look better. It makes the offense run better because when you're getting layups or easy shots, basket just tends to look so much bigger. So that was the other team stat I wanted to mention.
Okay. What about the individuals? Yeah, one other bench, which is kind of bench / individuals, is we had 13 bench points. And the surprising part of that is 7 of them came from Lexi Bargesser, and she got 7 of those in 9 minutes. And I saw you had tweeted out, she got fouled through some contact and didn't quite finish that. And I think to your point on Twitter, you said she's going to learn how to finish that, which I absolutely agree. But she also, hit her free throws too. She made 3 out of her 4 free throws as well and added 2 rebounds. So I thought the bench actually was pretty good for us today. We like I mentioned at one point, we had 3 freshmen playing together. Of course, one is Garzon, but we also had Lily Meister and Lexi Bargesser, all 3, and they're playing together. So I just think, again, it's a good testament to Coach Morin and how she's putting together the teams that we've been wanting to see more and more each year and just really building the program. And this year, what we're also seeing is that depth coming in, as well as, getting transfer talent in, getting our freshmen in that are actually contributing right away. So I thought, again, bench points, we got outscored on the bench, but I'm still very pleased with 13 bench points.
Yeah, one other thing I'll mention here before we move on to the individuals is, and Quang's pointed this out in the Workaholics a little bit, but we scored at 1.379 points per possession. We held Rutgers to 0.971, and Rutgers in the first half, I'm trying to remember the tweet. I think Rutgers is at roughly 1.2 in the first half. Right. So yeah, so I mean it was. That tells you how good the second half was for that number to drop. So I'll throw it to you for an individual.
Gosh, yeah, there's so many places you could really go to on this. There's, we had 4 people in double digit scoring here again for us today. Nobody with, again, we talked about rebounding, so no double doubles or anything like that today. But I think, we'll probably talk about Grace coming up, but her stat line in general was just fantastic, right? 21 points, 2 rebounds, 7 assists. The only blemish on there is the 4 turnovers, but other than that, I thought it was just an all around great, solid game. And she played 37 minutes. So clearly the coaches were seeing it as well from Grace. So yeah, that's probably the first individual I gravitated to today.
I'm going to go to Sydney Parrish because I thought Sydney was one that maybe struggled a little bit in the first half, especially the first quarter. But she ends up with 17 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal and a block. So again, and we're almost getting to that point where we just haven't, we almost sometimes overlook Sydney Parrish. And I think it's one of the things that this fan base needs to remember is don't overlook the contributions that these players are making just because they've come to be so expected, so consistent. Enjoy it while it's happening because, like I said, I was getting ready to say, sometimes I almost feel like, Sydney must not be playing very well, but you look at the end of the game, and she's, like I said, 17 and 6. She had 2 assists, a block, a steal. Take that every night.
Absolutely. I think we'd be remiss if we don't talk about Yarden Garzon and her 3-point shooting today, right? She came out on fire in that first half and was 4 for 4 from 3-point. I think she had most of our 3-pointers to start out with. So she just really looked fantastic in that first half. She ended up 4 of 6 at 14 points, 4 of 6 from 3-point land. So I thought Yarden had a fairly nice game today as well. Again, the only, if we're going to nitpick here for Yarden in her game, again, is fouling. Like she just has a propensity to be a little handsy and on her defense. And so she's getting whistled for a few too many fouls that I would still like to see her clean up a little more as she continues. But again, we're nitpicking at this point, I think.
Yeah, and the other stat line I'll kind of throw in here, I was a little surprised. I was beginning to wonder whether doghouse or just injured or whether it was just matchups. Sarah Scallion only played 9 minutes today. And most of those came at the end. Yeah. And I don't even think that was it. Yeah, she played some in the first half. I don't think she got in at all in the third quarter. And so I was a little bit, but the one thing that does concern me here about the stat line is 5 players at 30 minutes or more. The 5 starters played 30 minutes or more against Rutgers. And I'm not trying to overlook anybody in the league, but against a team that only had 2 league victories, it would have been nice to feel like you could have got those numbers down, especially like you said, Grace played 37 minutes, Chloe 35. So it would have been nice to get those numbers down for like those 2 into the lower 30s and everybody else in the high 20s, those couple of minutes. Now I know they get some time off, and not off, but they got a few days before they have to go up to Minneapolis and play the Golden Gophers. But that does concern me, to feel like we had to play those guys, all 5 of those players, 30 plus minutes in a game against Rutgers. So, but that's all the stat line numbers I had.
Yeah. The only other one I just wanted to talk about again, it was just the difference in our defense from the first half to the second. And I think the easiest way to really illustrate that is through scoring. So if you look at Rutgers, they scored 44 points in that first half, which would have put them on pace for 88, which is well above their season average, which they only averaged 65 points a game. And so you can then see in the second half, we held them to 26 points, 19 and 7 in the third and fourth quarter, respectively. So to hold them and turn them around, you clearly know that was talked about in halftime because each quarter, it just kind of went down 22, 20, 19, and then holding them to 7, I thought was just really great. And that included, again, the last 3 or 4 minutes with our bench coming in. But yeah, Jeff, to your point, once you're up so many points on a team, and especially like you said, like Rutgers, they're not real deep. What do they have? 8 players, I think, eligible players. So. They're not real deep. They're young. I would have really hoped that we could trust more of our bench earlier in that second or fourth quarter rather. But we didn't really see him come in until about 3 minutes or so left. So I agree with you. I would have liked to rest our starters a little bit more in that fourth quarter, especially once we knew the game was well in hand.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So that's it for Inside the Numbers, and we will go to the game ball.
Okay.
All right, it's time for our game ball. And as you can see, for those of you who are watching on our YouTube live feed, and welcome to all 44 of you right now who are currently here. A nice number to have on a Sunday afternoon. Game balls right now is Mackenzie Holmes. As we were joking the other night with Jay, just when she is finally done, we might have to rename this as the Mackenzie Holmes Award. But anyway, Mackenzie Holmes currently leads with 12, Sydney Parrish with 3, Yarden Garzon with 3, Grace Berger and Sarah Scalia each have 1. So Kathy, since I'm working on this side with the hosting duties today, how about you go first on the game ball?
Yeah, I think, I again agree with you and Jay. We definitely could rename this the Mackenzie Holmes Game Ball Award. And we could look at that again today, right? She had great numbers, 21 points again, 6 rebounds, and she played nice defense, a couple steals in there. But I'm going to give my game ball to Grace today. I thought, also with 21 points, the 7 assists, I thought that, the 3 for 3 3-point shooting was fantastic. I think she had only made 4 3-pointers all year up until this game. So she almost doubled her 3-point shots and makes, and 3 for 3. I thought she just had the better all around game. I thought she was really good on defense. She had some great assists from us. Again, the only blemish, if you're going to nitpick, is the 4 turnovers for Grace. So for me, I'm voting for her for my game ball.
Yeah, we're going to make that unanimous because I was thinking that all along. And I really came that way, especially about midway through the third quarter, when I really felt like Grace kind of got us past that point of where it was like 8 to 10 points, like it was at the end of the half. We kind of kept sitting there going back 8, 10, 12, back to 8, and Grace made a couple of plays there that really seemed to spark us to finish off that third quarter really strong. And such. So I'm going to go with Grace Berger as well. You've already mentioned her stat line, but like I said earlier, I just really felt this was the best that she's played since coming back from the injury. And that's something that doesn't surprise me, because I think as you get used to wearing the brace, as you get a little better conditioning and you get used to those things, your shot starts to come around. She's been passing, she's been leading. She had not shot the ball maybe as well, but she's starting to come around. And that just, to me, that's just one, that's almost like adding a new player when she'd been out for 8 games. It's almost that now it's like, again, a Grace Berger that is back to where she's as we talk about a lot of times, like when you and I have been on Assembly Call, the floor comes up higher, the ceiling gets higher with Grace Berger playing the way she did today.
And to your point, some of those passes she made weren't just, they weren't just run of the mill passes. There was one she had that I swear she was backwards and over her head. I don't know how she did it, kind of thing, right into Mackenzie, who had a nice layup there in the lane. And some of the other passes and the ones that don't show up the stat line, right, that we were talking about, those what we like to call the hockey assists that just don't even show up. I think she had a number of those because I think she just has seen the floor so well in this, her 5th year playing now, and she's just an absolute joy to watch all around. Just really great basketball IQ.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to mention, you were talking about turnovers. The other thing too, you can live with some of that. You'd like maybe have it down to 2, but as much as she handles the ball, as much as the ball is in her hands at key times, she's going to pick up a few. And sometimes I wonder, I wasn't sure. There were a couple times today where I think she got credited with the turnover, and I didn't think the pass was that bad. It didn't necessarily get handled. So I'm not exactly sure what's the determination in who gets the turnover. A lot of times when I was coaching, if I didn't think the pass was that bad and the person receiving it just either fumbled it away or I thought could have caught it, I would give it on the person on the catch. But I don't know how they're looking at it from that standpoint. So So Grace Berger gets her 2nd game ball of the season. We'll move on to the Hoosier Hustle Award here. And again, nice problem to have, because I think we can talk about a handful of kids again today in this award. Right now, again, for those of you who are watching, the ticker going along that Kathy has for us, Chloe leads the way with 5.5, but Sydney Parrish is next at 4.5. Grace Berger with 3, Bargesser, Meister each have 2, and then Geary, Garzon, and Peterson with 1 each. And Kathy, I'm going to let you go first again. Who gets your hustle award?
Yeah, I think, we have a number of choices here again today, Jeff. You could talk again about Mackenzie and her points going up. Yarden with her 4 for 4 to start off the game in the first half with her 3-pointers. But for me, I landed on Sydney Parrish. I thought she was just showing us things on both ends of the court and really doing the things that don't show up in the stat line. And to me, that is what kind of epitomizes the hustle award, right? She's diving on the floor for the loose balls, and she's really going after all of the things that you want her to do, that those winning plays that I heard you and Coach Tonsoni talk about the other day on the men's show. She does winning plays. She does the winning things that don't always show up. And I think we saw that again from her today. And her rebounding is just top notch to it. And she becomes one of those, utility players. Is not only is she doing the little things that don't show up, she does the things that do show up. 17 points today, 5-10 shooting and 3 for 6 from 3-point land. So for me, I'm voting for Sydney for my game ball or hustle award.
Yeah, I am going to mention here that I did have some consideration for Lexi Bargesser in this as well, with her 7 points in 9 minutes, 2 for 2 from the field, 3 of 4. But and not, it shouldn't really be a but she had a steal. Other than that, she didn't really have a whole lot, and a block, I should say, but she didn't really have some other things in the stat line. And I agree with you. Just Sydney is one of those who, and we've talked a little bit about this, the comment that Coach Morin had, I can't remember after what game.
Yeah.
But you can't pay attention to the hair, the nails, the look. When she gets out there on the floor, Sydney Parrish is out there to do one thing, and that's win. And she's going to do whatever it takes to help her team win. I'm really going to point out as well, here she was 4 for 4 at the line today. And I'm still kind of perplexed to why Sydney's a 65% shooter at the free throw line coming in, because she shoots the ball fairly well. So at this point, it's almost as much psychological, where she's thinking about it when she gets to the line. But she knocked down those, went 4 for 4 today. And on 3 of those all came on a foul when she got fouled shooting the 3-pointer over in the corner by the bench. So, that's one of those things that again, to me, Sydney Parrish is one of those players who's not always going to wow you. She's not always going to be like, you're not always going to be like, wow, I didn't realize that. But she's the difference maybe in what this team did last year to what it can possibly do this year if everybody can stay healthy going through, because there's just an awareness there, a court awareness and a competitiveness to her that I think is huge as we go through the end of the season.
Yeah, I absolutely. I love watching her play as well. And it's just the other surprising thing is the big question, at least for me during the offseason, was how well some of these transfers and the freshmen would integrate into the team. And Sydney in particular, it feels like she's been there a couple of seasons, and this isn't the first time playing together with a lot of these women. So to me, I think just that speaks a lot to her as a teammate as well.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about this the other day, and I forgot to mention it. So if you can still find it, I think we did talk about it with Jay the other day. There was a clip on one of the Twitter feeds the other day that was kind of about, they kind of had Sydney mic'd up. Yeah. They mic'd her up for a couple minutes, and they were talking, and I didn't quite catch all of it, what they were talking about. I missed it. And I went back and watched it a couple times. I still quit, but something about how many miles she was putting on her car, like she's going back and forth to Indianapolis quite a bit, and I'm like, Is she living in Indy and then driving down for practice and class every day? I was like, that doesn't seem, or she's just going home a lot. But she has a lot of friends that live up there that she goes to see. Maybe. And but it was a really interesting to see her, to listen to her being mic'd up. And so if you get a chance to go back on Twitter or search that and find it on a Google search, it's really an interesting thing to look at. So Sydney now moves into a tie for first place on the Hustle Award this year with her 5.5 game balls, or excuse me, 5.5 Hustle Awards, ties her with Chloe Moore McNeil. Yep. All right. So let's move on to lingering questions. And Kathy, this is one of those where you've been gone for a couple games, and I know you enjoyed Hawaii, but we almost, when you're winning like this, you almost feel like as podcast hosts, you're nitpicking about things. So, but what would be well, I guess any lingering questions you may have.
My it's kind of been lingering for a while. I'm just wondering if we're going to see Sarah Scalia get out of whatever slump she's in at this point. It seemed like she had a game where she went crazy again with scoring, and she was just really aggressive, and she played like I can't remember, it was something like 28 minutes or something off the bench and just had a great game. And I thought, this is it. Now Sarah's back. And now she seemed to have regressed back into whatever's going on with her and her confidence or whatever is going on off court. So that's still my lingering question is, will we see Sarah get back to a consistent form that we are seeing from her from the beginning of the year? But we didn't really talk a whole lot about Sarah today, but she's probably my biggest lingering question.
And it was Michigan. It was just a week or so, just earlier in the week when she really exploded at Michigan, played really well. And I think we all thought coming off that maybe she'd found it. But, confidence is such a fragile thing sometimes. You never know what's going to make it appear and how long it'll stay. And you also don't know what maybe will take it away. And all of a sudden it's gone again. So, but she struggled a little bit on Thursday against Ohio State. I thought she played better than she did today on Thursday, but because she really struggled at times today. Now she played okay in the second quarter, a little bit defensively, but she just never seem like she was in sync offensively. My lingering question, kind of a part 1 and 2, but the first one's kind of it really doesn't matter, but it does make you interested to see where this team will end up. I would assume somewhere in the top 5 this week. They beat Michigan. They beat Ohio State. Both teams were ranked. They did what they had to do at home. And so it'll be interesting to see where they are. Now, again, a poll, an AP poll, a coach poll is a snapshot. It's where you are. It does not matter in the grand scheme of things. Where we want to be at the end of the year is hopefully talking about going to a Final Four. And that's the only poll that matters is at the end of the season when they, where they finish. But the other lingering question I've got here is just, you've got a couple games coming up, and I don't think they'll be as flat as they were at the beginning of the game today. But Minnesota's another team that's struggling, bottom of the league. And then they're going to go to Sunday, a week from today, they go to West Lafayette to play Purdue at Mackey. And for those who didn't see it today, Purdue went into Columbus and beat Ohio State on the road. And so Purdue's kind of been, and then they beat Illinois earlier in the week on the road in Champaign. So Purdue had been kind of a roller coaster team. Everybody thought they were going to be in that next group, that they weren't going to be in the top 3-4, but everybody thought they would be maybe in that mix of 5, 6, 7, and they hadn't been. But all of a sudden now they're back into the mix. Back a week or so ago, they were kind of on the outside looking into the tournament. I would imagine they're going to be on the inside now, maybe 11 or 12 seed at this point, maybe a 10. On the late when the new bracketology comes out. But these are a couple of games you can't take for granted. You got to go up to Minnesota. Again, they haven't been winning, but you would expect them to be fired up. And this is one of the things Jay and I talked about the other day. I'll kind of get your opinion about this as well. This is a team that used to be the hunter. This was a team that was on the rise, a program that was on the rise, used to be the hunter. Now they have to get used. And I think they are. I think they understand this. But they're the hunted, and they're going to walk into that atmosphere in Minnesota, and they are definitely going to walk into it at Purdue a week from today.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are they handling it each game, right? So that's
my lingering question.
That absolutely. So, can they make sure that they get, especially going into West Lafayette, that one in particular, if they have a slow start there like they did today, I think they're going to find themselves in some real trouble, because to your point, I think Purdue definitely of the upcoming games is the one that might give us the other road bump we might hit if they come out flat today. I think they could potentially recover Minnesota and whatnot, but hopefully they won't need to, and they'll come out completely focused when they come out again on Wednesday.
And if you can get through these 2 games and you're still at 1 loss, and assume Iowa is there, then you're going to get to that part of the schedule that we talked about in our preseason shows, where it's all of a sudden it becomes a real grind it out, because you're going to have to play Iowa twice. You'll play Michigan again. You'll play Ohio State again. There are not very many easy. I think maybe there was one game that we thought that was kind of an easier game in that last stretch, but it becomes a grind. So any hope you really want to have of kind of controlling your destiny in the league race, you need to go 2-0 this week. And that's why I think it's really important to kind of have that mindset that you got to treat these two teams as hard as it is. Purdue will be a little bit easier, rivalry game, but treat them both like ranked opponents. You got to get up for both of them. You got to be ready to play. And I think that's going to be a huge part of it.
Yep. Absolutely agree.
So we're going to preview our next opponent here. All right. We go to Minnesota Wednesday night, 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 Central. That game will again be on Big Ten Plus. I think that may be one of the last games that's on Big Ten Plus, but you'll still need your subscription. Indiana trails the all-time series 37-33, including trailing 21-16 in Minneapolis. IU has won the last 6 in a row and 8 of the last 10 versus the Golden Gophers, including 80-70 in Bloomington last season when Sarah Scalia was on fire from 3. Maybe she can go back to the barn and be on fire. Minnesota coming into the day was 9-11 overall, 2-7 in the conference. They were hosting Michigan in Minneapolis this afternoon. I have no idea how they were doing, or if that was maybe even a little bit later in the afternoon. And then Kathy, I'll let you take the next part.
Yeah. So they are, as a team, averaging 74 points per game. That's 13th in the Big Ten, and they give up just under 72 points per game, which is also 13th in the Big Ten. In terms of shooting, they shoot right around 41% field goal percentage, including 30% from 3-pointer. So I don't want to take them lightly, but 30%, it doesn't seem like they'll have a big 3-point presence that we need to be worried about terribly. But in terms of defense, they are holding their opponents to 41% shooting and only 29% from 3. So that'll be interesting, especially the way we've been shooting the ball like we did today, to see how we can come out with our 3-point shooting. In terms of turnovers, they turn it over 17 turnovers per game, but only force 16. Only force, but so 16. So we'll see, is that defense of ours going to continue to travel and, they have a propensity to turn it over, and can we continue to be kind of cleaner with the ball? In terms of individuals, they are led by Mara Brown. She is a 6-foot freshman. She leads them in scoring with 15 points per game, which puts her 12th in the Big Ten. And then Alana Michoud is 6'2" sophomore. She averages 14 points per game. And Mallory Heyer is a 6'1" freshman, averaging just under 12 points per game. Michoud leads them in rebounding at 8.2 rebounds per game. And then in terms of assists, Amaya Battle is a 5'11" freshman who leads them with 4.4 assists per game, which is actually 6th in the Big Ten. They're a very young team. They have 7 freshmen on their roster. And then in terms of coaching, Lindsay Whalen is their coach. She has been there 5 years. This is her 5th year, and she is 69-68 overall. What are your thoughts though on that Michigan game coming up, our Minnesota game? Do you think we're gonna see Sarah kind of get back?
I hope so. You would like to think she would have a little bit of an incentive for that. We're seeing here, Jim in the Workaholic says that Michigan a 75-41 lead. I don't know if that's a final, but definitely Michigan going to win that game, it looks like. So Minnesota would fall to 9-12 and 2-8 in the league. One other thing too, you talk about Lindsay Whalen, the legend. Lindsay Whalen grew up in Minnesota, went to Minnesota, was an All-American, had a very distinguished WNBA career, both with the Sun and the Lynx before taking the job at Minnesota. But boy, the thing that really jumped out at me, Kathy, was the 7 freshmen, whether they're true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. And you're looking at the kids we talked about in the kind of the preview here. She's gone young, and I think she's willing to lose some games this year to get some of those young kids some experience and let them learn on the fly. And I would be Minnesota's a team you look at if she can keep them together and then she adds some pieces up to it, that in a couple of years you may see Minnesota back toward the upper half of the league where they were for quite a bit of time. But it's been a little bit of a struggle up there. They've gone to the WNIT a couple of times under Whalen, but they've missed postseason action twice in her previous 4 years. So I'll ask you too. But you kind of live at least that far out that way. You a little easier for you to get to Minnesota than me. it's just such an interesting gym to play in, and it's, you know, the barn, and I'll be interested, as you said, I'll be kind of interested to see how well we shoot the ball up there,
right?
And can we make shots in that, you know, in that huge open background and such. But I'm really looking forward. I would like to see Sarah Scalia kind of use this game as a way to get, you know, back into the flow.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to see as well. So if anyone can shoot it in the barn, I'm hoping she's the one that comes out and shows us. So the 77-41 is the final score. Michigan beat Minnesota today. So yeah, and then the same thing. You know, I'm not sure how some of our women, if they've ever played on that elevated floor before. Some of them are obviously back, right? Grace has, Chloe Moore McNeil has, but Sydney Parrish hasn't. Is that going to bother her? Yarden Garzone, is that going to bother her at all? And to your point, you know, the sight lines always seem weird in that place too for shooting. So it will definitely be an interesting thing. And again, can't take Minnesota lightly. Like, whatever, 7 freshmen, you know, Michigan just, you know, having their number today, whatever the reason is, you know, they still have won some games, and you can't just assume you're going to go up there and walk all over them like Michigan did. So got to come out a little more focused for sure.
So that will be on Wednesday. Programming wise, Assembly Call will be on Tuesday after the Maryland game with their post game show. Be sure to check them out and catch them after the Maryland game. Also, be sure to catch or subscribe to the next episode of Crimson Cast, which is part of our Back Home Network family. And our next show, even though the Hoosiers play on Wednesday, we have some conflicts. Our next show will be Thursday. All right, we'll be on Thursday, the day after the Minnesota game. It'll be 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 Central, and I will be joined by the voice of the Hoosiers, Austin Render. And Kathy may be able to join us. She's still not sure, but we think, you know, but hopefully she can. If not, Austin's going to be with us as well. So we'll make a quick show of that, because Assembly Call Radio, I assume, is going to be on at 9:00 Eastern, 8 Central. So that's our programming here coming up. And don't forget, our next show will be on Thursday, 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 Central.
Yes. All right. Let's get a little more Bob Thompson music. Whoop. Hit the right button.
Yeah, it's been one of those days. And it's time for last call here on Doing the Work. And we're going to throw it to Kathy. What's on your mind as we wrap things up?
Yeah, Jeff, again, just capping off a great week of Indiana women's basketball again. I know I wasn't on the podcast earlier this week with you all, but I did watch the games and a little bit later, and it was very exciting. And I was glad probably in my hotel room that maybe I wasn't, you know, too close to some other rooms, because I was watching kind of late at night, and I'm not the most quiet person watching basketball. So just really an exciting week for our Hoosiers. Just really to continuing to have our machine rolling down the highway here this year. You know, best start in program history. Again, congratulations to Coach Moore, and congratulations to the team. I really just don't know what else to say. You know, I'm sure that, you know, we're going to bump our toe. We're going to have a speed bump here eventually, but it's hard to imagine what we're going to feel like when that comes, because we've only seen it one time this year. And, you know, I bet if they could go back in time and get that Michigan State game back, they would, you know, they would pay some money to get that time machine. So I think that was a blip on the radar. We have to mentally prepare that we're going to have that again. But we never expect it. And I think we're just going to keep the party going here, because it is just so much fun. And also just a quick shout out to the crowd and all the fan support. We had another, you know, huge crowd. I think over 8,800 people came today in attendance.
85-98.
I knew there was another 8 in there. So there was the 6th largest regular season game in program history. So again, kudos to all the fans that are able to get out and continue to support this team, even when it's not a top 10, top 15 opponent. You know, they came out anyway and really showed support. And I thought they were pretty raucous. And I thought there were key moments where the crowd really got behind the team as well. So for me, again, just continuing to watch them is a joy. Make sure everyone's appreciating all of our players and continue to support them. And thanks to everyone here that's been listening and following along with us as well. So just really very happy to be able to watch this team.
Yeah, I'm probably going to sound like I'm on repeat or something when it comes to last call right now. It's such a joy to watch this program and be where it is compared to where it's been historically. To see what Coach Terry Moore has done with it, and it really, and I've told people this, for me growing up, these were like, well, it's like watching the old night teams in the 80s, or even for me in the 70s. They hustle, they battle, they get on the floor for loose balls. They're mentally tough. They play physically tough. It's an older school kind of basketball with some modern to it that Terry Moore has put into this program. And it's really fun to watch them get to the point where, like we said at the beginning of the show, 20-1 overall, 20-1, off to the best start in school history and such. So that's, to me, is, I'm sure I say that pretty much every last call, but we're going to wrap it up here. If you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assembly call. You can be part of our private community as well. Join today at assemblycall.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our new logos. And we try to rotate our logos every episode here on the Doing the Work podcast, especially the YouTube live feed. Also, a big thank you, as Kathy mentioned, to Bob Thompson for our new music that you've heard throughout the broadcast. We want to thank all of you and the Workaholics for being here today to watch us live on the YouTube, or if you catch us tomorrow or the next day on your favorite podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you soon. Until then, keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. All right. Boy, what a start. What a start. We were about like the girls were, the ladies were. So.
Right. We were definitely out of focus too.
I figured I got new new earpods, and they want to sync up with the mic. And they were also messing. I had a YouTube page open on the on the Safari, and it was, for some reason, it was kicking it on. That's why I was like, wait a minute, my phone's off. I was trying to figure out where. Anyway, so I'm learning a little bit here with these new earpods. So anyway, so hey, so let's go ahead and we'll talk to everybody on Thursday. Join us here on Thursday at 8:00 Eastern, 7 Central, and Austin Render, the voice of the Hoosiers, will be with us. So until Thursday, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.